Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. Hope you had a lovely Halloween yesterday. We're big, we're bad, and we're back with another Frequently Asked Questions Friday. So we have some fun questions for you. This first one in particular will start months worth of debate, so gear up for this one. But before you do that, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed. Oh, and by the way, after you hit the subscribe button, there'll be a little bell, and that's a notification. When you hit that, it notifies you that we have a video. And of course, gear up, get ready to leave some comments and questions below, because this one is going to get you talking. How often do you update your Mac OS? I suppose it was just a matter of time before that question came up, and it's been asked in various different forums that we're a part of and various different places that we have gone to. And I believe every plugin manufacturer has sent out at least an email. I think I have had several notifications from Stephen Slate. I saw Instagram, email, you name it, Facebook posts, group things. You know, lots of people, not just Stephen, but lots of people have been saying, please do not update to Catalina. And that apparently is the latest OS. And I do actually have it currently running on my laptop, which is not currently running Pro Tools. So that's probably why it hasn't bothered me. But we actually have an old Mac Tower, which has been maxed out with many, many gigabytes of RAM. I think it's like 96, isn't it? Thanks to OWC, great company, God bless them, we maxed it out. So it runs pretty darn smoothly. And we're not running a native system, we're running, you know, a Pro Tools HDX system. So what does that mean? That means it's running as fast as it possibly can. And yes, we run actually about two OSs back, at least two, yeah, two OSs back, because it's stable. So that's the exact answer to the question. No, we don't upgrade our OS unless the DAW manufacturer that we use recommends to. It's been like that from the beginning. When I first started using Avid Pro Tools, and I don't want to make this a discussion about Pro Tools, but just the DAW of choice that I started using in the 90s, it's always been that way. You were always told to, you know, wait for the DAW to announce, and nowadays, of course, plugin manufacturers, etc., all these people to announce when their software was capable of running on the latest OS. If you're Apple and you bring out a new OS and you haven't involved the 4.5 million companies that produce apps, probably, when I say 4.5 million, probably more like 40+ million companies that are producing apps and software and whatever, that you're going to upgrade it and the changes are going to be X, Y, and Z. I mean, look, let's be honest about this. Think about it. You're a company. I'm not going to try and defend any particular company here, but how do you make sure that all the other companies are up to speed? I suppose you just have to do what you have to do. You upgrade your OS, you make it run better, whether it be Windows or you know, or Mac OS, and then you release it and you give companies access to whatever the improvements are or changes or whatever you want to say, and then they play catch up. I think this is more of a discussion about how quickly these companies are able to, you know, get up to speed. Or in the case of some DAWs, I think they just recommend don't upgrade for a period of time. There's another thought process as well, which I think is very, very important, that it's probably not smart. No, I'll rephrase that. It's definitely not smart to always upgrade the day something comes out. Why is that, you ask? Well, let's just face it. Bugs tend to take a little bit of time to iron out. It seems that with everything, whether it be iOS, operating systems on your phone, on iPads, on tablets, on laptops, on desktops, whatever it is, it always, I'm going to say the word always again, always comes down to this. They upgrade it, and then about 1, 2, 3 days, weeks, months in, all of these different bugs have appeared, and the software and the applications that we use aren't running on it anymore. So it's really smart to be smart, to just hold off and let the companies they play catch up, let the bugs get ironed out, and just don't upgrade until the companies that you use, the DAWs, the plugins, etc., say, we've got it figured out and please upgrade. So that's really my advice. My advice is don't upgrade unless your DAW and the supporting plugins allow you to do it. Just go and check on their website, whatever they're suggesting. Make sure you have at least the minimum requirements and preferably the latest version that will run your software so it runs the smoothest. Just don't go past that. I think it's just a marriage of making sure your DAW and your plugins and your iOS or your operating system work really nicely together. As ever, please have a discussion down below. What are you doing? How many iterations back are you? What is your DAW? What OS does it run on? If you're a Mac user, if you're a PC user, what do you use? What Windows version do you use that runs with your particular DAW? And what version of your DAW are you on? I know many people that are on 2 or 3 DAWs back because they think and believe strongly that it's more stable with their OS and they don't want to change it. And that's also a reality, is if you've got a stable DAW, lots of plugins that you like, that runs really smoothly on your operating system, why the heck would you want to change it unless there was some vast improvement? I think that is another part of the discussion I'd love to have down below. Please, answers on a postcard. Now leave some comments down below. Let us know your experiences. What is the ideal format one should use when recorded? I've noticed that many multitracks in the Academy are set to 24-bit 48K. I assume you would be utilizing higher sample rates in your recordings. Am I overthinking that going to a higher sample rate will be better? Should I go back to 48K, as maybe is that all you really need? We do have multitracks in the Academy which are basically at 24-bit 48K. There is a reason why I do this, and I may have touched on this in previous videos. It's because of almost the same thing that just came up in the previous question. Not everybody has the latest and greatest. We are here to provide education to as many people as possible. And not everybody has the latest, flashiest, i9 processing, super incredible, whatever computer with the latest interface that can run 192. A lot of people have 10 or 15-year-old equipment. And if I only supplied and only created multitracks that were 32-bit and 192K, that means a lot of people would not be able to learn. We wouldn't be able to create the community that we have. The reality is that music usually ends up being 44.1 and 16-bit in most cases. Now, what do I think you should do? I think actually you should always record at the highest sample rate that you can. Of course, go into a studio, especially when recording like organic acoustic instruments that will just love the fact that you're recording at 192. If you want to do that and you have, most importantly, a fast enough computer to run a huge amount of tracks that are 192, an interface that will allow you to do that, then go ahead and do it. Oh, and also, of course, a schnizzle ton of hard drive space, because you're using 4 times as much space on every single one of those files. So that's the criteria. But the reason why we make sure all our sessions are at 48 and 24 is twofold. You could say number one, because it's going to end up at around that anyway. That's one reason. But the main reason is that we need it to be available to everybody. Right from the get-go of digital recording and good quality interfaces, and even if you go back to like mid-late 90s, everything was capable of being done at 48K. So it means that people that maybe have, like as said earlier, 15-year-old equipment, potentially even 20-year-old equipment, will be able to load these into their DAW and work on these multi-tracks. So that's why we keep it low. But if you want my honest opinion, I say record at the highest level you can. And the reason why I say this, and this is really important, please, you can discuss this one, but honestly, is because that is what people are future-proofing themselves to do. It is really, really important. If you want to future-proof yourself, then record at the highest rate that you can. Labels are now expecting things to be delivered at the highest possible rate, because when it comes to film, TV, and all of that wonderful world, they are asking for the highest quality files they can get. And they have budgets that demand it, and they have budgets to pay for this stuff at the highest rate. So I would definitely future-proof yourself. But once again, we keep it at a lower rate so that there is more chance that people can use this of every level of, frankly, social economics. It's about, like, people should be able to learn how to record music and make music and mix music that can't afford to buy, thousands of dollars worth of gear. And one of the things about Produce Like a Pro and why we started this was a great leveler. Everybody talks about the democratization of the music industry. They pay it lip service. You know what? I believe it. And I want people to be able to get together as a sense of community and work on music and share it and learn from each other. So if it means that we can provide multi-tracks that anybody can use with even 20-year-old equipment, then we're going to do it. And frankly, at 48K and 24-bit, it sounds pretty darn good. For a complete beginner who knows very little, can you explain in broad terms what an audio engineer does while in the DAW? Are we cleaning up the sound of all of the individual instruments and then putting them together? Or do we have to make decisions based on how the sounds interact with one another? For somebody that's a complete beginner, that is a really, really articulate question and a really, really smart question. That's a really good question. So I don't know who asked that. Please identify yourself. Leave it down below. I'd love to sort of pick your brain where you came up with that, because that's quite an advanced question. You're saying you're a complete beginner, but when you say, or do we have to make decisions based on how the sounds interact with one another? I love that, because that is a big part of what we're trying to sort of get across here. Yes, it's really, really important for me when I record that I get the sound the way I want it to be, so I can then relate how the next sound is going to interact with it. I'm about to go and speak at Muse Expo. I'm doing that in just over a week. And when I go to Muse Expo, one of the things I'm going to do is pull up a multi-track and discuss the recording. And the way I recorded the song is I recorded it exactly the way I wanted to hear. And it allowed me to get a drum sound that I wanted, a bass sound that I wanted, guitars that I wanted, pianos, vocals, because everything interacted and fit together. It was like a puzzle that I built specifically. The drums allowed the bass to sit in the way that it did, and the guitars, etc. So everything had a specific sound. And I love that idea. So that second part of your question is really fantastic. Yes, for me, that is really important. I do want to make decisions based on how the sounds interact with one another. Great thing. And then you asked, are we cleaning up the sound of all the individual instruments and then putting them together? Yes, there is an element of cleaning up. If I'm recording on my own, Eric can be running Pro Tools, but if I am playing all the instruments, like sometimes I'm not a great drummer, but when I do go in there and play and then comp myself and time myself, but when I go in there and then play some guitar and bass and keys and all that stuff, I might overplay because it's hard to self-produce yourself. And then I'll come back here, sit down in front of the computer and do some judicious muting. When I'm working with an instrumentalist, somebody, a guitar player I've hired specifically to play guitars, I will definitely focus on the parts where they should be. Rather than going, just give me this beautiful arpeggio through the whole song, I can spend a little bit more time pinpointing where it is and just focusing on maybe 3 or 4 areas that need that arpeggio. I might overplay, not always, but I might overplay on my own and then come back in and mute it. Just because I need that objectivity of not playing instrument and sitting down and listening to the track and going, yeah, it works here, sort of works here, but I don't want to use it, and it works in the bridge, so I'll mute everywhere else except for those areas. And that's part of my decision making. Then I'll play another part. So that sort of answers your second part of your question there. Are we cleaning up the sound of all the individual instruments and then putting them together? Yes, to a certain extent. And then your first part says, can you explain in broad terms what an audio engineer does in the DAW? I think that is really it. If you're just engineering, you're probably doing a lot of cleanup, you're balancing things all the time. You should be at minimum rough mixing, so that it always sounds really good coming out of the speakers, because if it always sounds really good coming out of the speakers, you're going to be able to make really good decisions about what sound comes next, what performance comes next, how it's recorded. So That's really kind of a big part of the job, is to just kind of get it to sound absolutely fantastic. And building, using it to build blocks. Essentially, I would say it's all of those things. It's definitely about recording the way you want to hear things, even if that means recording a DI and using plugins, whatever it is. Get that sound the way you want it to be, give you a decision on what to do next. Also, like you're saying, edit it so that the performances are where you want them to be. So that, again, informs you of what the next part should be and how that interacts. It's a combination of parts and sounds will influence your decision making. And of course, another part of the engineer's job is to maybe tighten where necessary. This is the art, though. It's not just to sit there and make everything fit on the grid, but to say, you know what, that guitar part sounds amazing, but those last two notes are slightly late and they don't feel good against the track, and just nudge them slightly forward, as opposed to going in and going, chopping the whole thing together. Maybe that'll work in a sort of EDM, slam you over the head, everything has to be on the grid world, but in the world of rock and roll, we like the breathing. And the skill is like, how do you keep the breathing and you just get it to feel good? I was listening to a Supertramp song on the radio this morning, taking our kids to school for Halloween. They did a big Halloween walk around. It was just beautiful, like all dressed up. It was amazing. And on the drive down, the Supertramp song was actually playing off my wife's phone. And it started probably 6 beats slower than it ended, maybe even more, because she had it on repeat. And it was like, I can't remember what it was. I think it was When I Was Young. When I was young, it was great. It went right back to the top. And I was like, wait there, the whole song. I'd never thought about it because I'd never listened to the song on loop. Never listened to it on loop. And I'm like, wow, that song just took me on this beautiful journey of just like getting progressively faster where necessary and more intense. And then it looped and came back to the beginning and was at a different tempo. I think it was that Supertramp song. Now I'm blanking because we listened to a few others. But my point is like some of the best music ever made does that. I've worked on songs that have done well that are slower second verses than first verses. These things do happen. So that is part of the skill. Anyway, what a wonderful set of questions this week. Please, on that last one in particular, give us an idea of what you think the role of an engineer is, especially, if you're a guy or a girl like me that's performing as well, and like how you give yourself some perspective. You work on a part maybe in the room and demo it up, but, do you record it and then mute it and move it around and try different ideas? For me, that's part of my process because I'm self-producing. So I need sometimes to hear it. Sometimes the part comes straight to my mind where it's going to be and I record it and it works perfectly. Other times I have a part and I think it will work in 2 or 3 places, but then I have to come back in and listen and make that decision. What is your process? What is your process and what is your belief, more importantly, that an engineer's role is? That would be absolutely wonderful to answer. Thanks for these marvelous questions. Please leave tons of comments and questions below. Remember, this is a place to leave questions for future Fact Fridays. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and if you haven't been to producelikeapro.com, please go there and sign up for the email list. You'll get a whole bunch of free goodies. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.